Brought to you by Basecamp Ed. I'm Morgan, your host of the Homeschool Curious podcast. Whether you're deep in the homeschooling world or just starting to get curious, I'm here to bring you inspiring conversations with parents, educators, and business owners navigating the wild, wonderful world of parenting. Let's get curious together. Today, I am beyond excited to welcome my friend Julianne Nienberg, the incredible mom and creative mind behind My Outdoorsy Mom. Back in 2025, I had the absolute privilege of being a guest on her podcast, and since that conversation, we've stayed connected as friends. Julianne has such a gift for making the outdoors feel approachable and joyful, even for busy families with little ones. I'm so thrilled to have her here today. In this episode, we're diving into realistic ways to get our kids outside more. Yes, even when the weather is meh. And why unstructured play and a little bit of risky play can be so good for their hearts, bodies, and confidence. So grab your favorite coffee or tea or whatever keeps you going, settle in, and let's get started. Today's episode is sponsored by Basecamp Ed, a community building app that is free for parents to find local, like-minded families, dedicated teachers, and educational resources. Connect with parents to form your own co-ops, playdates, or groups. Need a math tutor or a sports coach? Teachers can list their credentials. There is also a business platform to discover game-changing educational brands. Take control of your child's educational journey. Visit their website at basecamped.com or download it in the App Store. Homeschooling was never meant to be done alone. It takes a village. Build it with Basecamp Ed. I am so excited to have Julianne here from My Outdoorsy Mom. So before we start, just tell me a little bit more about you and your family.
Yes. So my name is Julianne. I am the mom and voice behind My Outdoorsy Mom on Instagram. I also have a podcast. I currently live in Michigan with my family. I've got 3 young kids. My oldest is 8. My middle is 6 and my youngest is 5. And we live in the Metro Detroit area and we love taking advantage of everything that Michigan has to offer. In the summertime, you can find us exploring the Great Lakes or at a nearby lake, swimming. We are trying to get as much outdoor time as possible in the summer, especially because right now, at this time of recording, we have just kind of a gloomy winter. So we love to live it up in the summertime. And if you can't find us by water, we're usually in our backyard playing. And that's what I talk a lot about on my platform is the importance of unstructured outdoor play for kids and nature play and just getting them outside so that they can learn about nature, but also just enjoy being outside without the activities, without all the toys, that they can learn to appreciate nature for all of its simple joys.
I love that. What is the story of My Outdoorsy Mom? How did she start?
I was thinking back on this the other day because a lot of my story is that I was a full-time working mom. I was pregnant with my 3rd. I had 2 kids, 2 toddlers, and we were doing the daily grind. We were getting up early, getting the kids to daycare, getting to work, hustling out of work so I could pick up my kids and that they wouldn't be the last kids left at daycare. And I remember thinking, you know, when I had this revelation, it was in the middle of winter, and I just realized my kids probably aren't getting as much playtime outside in the winter at daycare as I would hope. And I know that they have a lot of responsibilities there at the daycare, and they have a lot of kids, and I just felt my heart kind of saying, you know what? These kids need more outdoor time. I had recently read the book, There's No Such Thing as Bad Weather, and so I was just blown away at how Scandinavian culture really embedded nature and the outdoors into every single aspect of their life. And I was so motivated to implement that however I could into our life. And so I would pick up my kids from daycare. I'd rush them back home. I would get them inside only to take them back outside immediately after. This is in that time frame of if you're a working mom, you get home, you're rushing to make dinner. I was putting all that aside to get my kids back into their snow gear just so we could stand around on our patio for 15 minutes. And I remember my kids were 3 and maybe 18, 19 months old.
They're like, Mom,
and we would just stand. They would just stand and gawk at me and look at me like, what are we doing out here? And they didn't know what to do. We had just moved to our new old house. It's an 1800s like farmhouse, and we had property. And they wouldn't leave the patio. We might as well have just like had our hands stuffed in our pockets looking at each other, and they wouldn't leave the patio. And so I would spend the 15 minutes out there. I'd start walking the property and they'd follow me. And we would do this for weeks. I was out there with them. And then eventually I started to kind of sneak back inside. I would get them out there and I would put a timer on our table that faced the sliding doors out to the patio. And I would show them, you're going to be out here for 15 minutes by yourselves. You're going to find something to do. And this is an 18-month-old and a 3-year-old. I think back on this and laugh now, but I was really adamant about setting a boundary of 15 minutes. I knew my 3-year-old could do it, but I'm like, am I a little crazy for expecting an 18-month-old to do this? But the 18-month-old had his sibling, had his big sister. And so for the first 2 weeks of letting them do that alone, of course, with me watching in the window, they would still stand around on the patio. They'd peek their head in. They'd say, my 3-year-old would ask, is it time to come in? Can I come in now? And I say, no, you still have 5 minutes. I'd show them the timer. But I realized that after 2 weeks had passed, they started to get braver. They started to leave the patio. They actually started to go out into the yard. They started to go explore. And 15 minutes grew to 20 minutes, and 20 minutes grew to 30 minutes. And by the springtime, I had a 3-year-old and an 18-month-old who could play outside for 30 to 45 minutes with me watching in the window. And I realized, like, this is it. This is just making it a part of our daily rhythm. It wasn't fancy. Sometimes we would just play in the driveway. Sometimes in the wintertime, it was walking down the end of the block and coming back home. But it was something that I think, looking back on it now, I thought that they needed it, but I needed it especially. And that's the part of my story that I'm coming to terms with now, being so far on the other side of things, that I realized how much I needed that time as well, to step outside with them. And then I also needed that time when they were playing outside, that I could have 15 minutes inside to just take a deep breath, prepare myself for the evening shift, and welcome them back into the home a lot more calm and more regulated, so that we could get through the rest of, so that we could not just get through, but enjoy our time together, enjoy that evening time before bedtime, and then, wake up and do it all over again.
I love that. And so you started at 15, and that's such a good piece of advice, encouragement for moms who have young children. This episode is going to come out when it's chilly outside. So do you have any other good encouragement or advice to kind of embrace nature when the weather is just like, ugh?
Yes. I think the toughest part, especially if you live somewhere where it's cold, is just the mental hurdle of embracing that you are probably going to spend more time getting gear on your kids than you are spending time outside. And I remember in that season thinking, I'm doing a lot of work for a very little payoff right now, but I know in the long run, if we keep doing this, this will just become habit, and that they will also get better at putting on their outdoor gear. And it's funny because my youngest is 5. He's been to preschool, and one of the most consistent pieces of feedback his teachers will give me is that he is so fast at putting his snow pants on. He's always the first to get his snow pants on, and then he's helping his classmates get their snow gear on as well. So it is truly just a habit that you have to build. And if you're in that season of life with littles, embrace that your outdoor time might be little pockets of your day throughout the day. So we might have a snack on the patio for 10 minutes, and that's it. Or we might get 30 minutes while the baby is napping. Okay, can we build that in somewhere in the afternoon as well? Like after the baby wakes up, can we go on a walk for 30 minutes? Everyone in the stroller, if one kid's old enough to be on the scooter, you might just be going down to the stop sign at the end of your street. But that counts. All of that time, all of that exposure to nature and to the outdoors builds and builds. And for us, it has resulted in children who crave the outdoors, who when they come home or when they have a free moment, they are just running out the back door, playing outside, creating their own little villages. So my biggest piece of advice for moms who might be living in cold weather states or have really little ones in this cold weather is just take advantage of those little micro moments, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Snacks always help. And then also having the right gear for your kids pays off big time. So obviously warm gear, waterproof, and you don't have to spend a lot of money. A lot of our gear when my kids were younger were thrifted or were hand-me-downs, but it was such a blessing to us, and it was what kept us going outside and being consistent and building a daily rhythm.
I love that story you just told about how one of your sons in daycare is the quickest to put on his clothes. I love following the My Outdoorsy Mom Instagram because you give such good little tidbits and piece of advice. And I remember it was right when it was starting to get cold, you posted how you taught him how to put on his clothes without your help. And it might take you, 20 or 30 minutes over the weekend to practice it and do it. And it might seem annoying, but it pays off. And it's like that for almost anything, right? Teaching your kid how to actually empty the dishwasher without breaking the dishes. Like it might take an hour once to go through it, but then it pays off in the long term.
Yeah, he mastered that. They call it, the coat flip. And when he was in
Yeah.
preschool, they called it like the preschool flip. And he mastered it. And so some of the comments in that content that you're talking about, moms are saying, my 2-year-old learned this. And I'm like, what a blessing. And I remind moms, it's a blessing to you that your kid can put their own gear on, and it also empowers them. It empowers
100%.
them.
I was
I
just
mean,
gonna
you
say
know,
that.
anytime your kids, when they're that age, 2, 3 years old, when they can do something and accomplish something on their own, I look at the pride and the joy that just fills their faces. They are so proud to be able to do something, to contribute. So absolutely, when you have
Yeah.
pockets of your day where maybe you're not in a rush, you're not going anywhere, if you're just hunkered down at home, use that time to practice putting on the jackets, zipping up the jackets, the order in which you put the winter gear on, the mittens, the gloves, the hat, the boots. Those are perfect times. If there's a baby napping, you can get the winter gear out and have your kid practice doing that. The more practice they get, the more equipped they will be. And again, it has been such a blessing, not just to parents, but also to anyone that your child might be, in the care of, whether it's a teacher or a caregiver, a babysitter, or preschool teachers. They have always made a comment to me about how my youngest is just so fast at doing it, but then so independent. And then he goes on to help other kids do it as well.
Oh, okay, so we've talked kind of the younger kids. Your youngest is now 5 and your oldest is 8. So as you are in that next phase of motherhood, but what have you seen now that they're a little bit older? I don't know if it's your youngest or your middle that will climb very high trees that would most moms would be like, oh my gosh, how are you doing that? How have they gotten so comfortable with that risky play?
Yeah, it's a favorite topic of mine, and I feel like I was thrust into risky play because of my middle, who
Is
came out the
wild.
womb just rocking and rolling. He
Always
turned
that
over
second
at
one.
I
Always
know.
the
They have a
second.
special place in my heart. He when he was born, he at his first week appointment rolled over on the table. Rolled over. Began walking at 10 months, climbed out of the crib at 18 months. Probably could have climbed out of the crib much earlier, but I think the first time I actually spotted it and had a reaction to it was at 18 months. And so he kind of forced me into being comfortable with everything risky that comes along with having a boy, right? Because I had a girl first, and she was very, very cautious, very conscientious, very firstborn. And I think birth order is so fascinating to me. So then my second came, and he was just rocking and rolling. And yes, now he's the kid that climbs 80 feet up into our trees. And I always preface this by saying that we've lived in our home for 5 years, and we have beautiful, mature, grown trees. And he has had the blessing of getting to grow up in this yard and getting to grow up in these trees. And so he's been climbing since he was 2.5, 3 years old. And so now, as I watch him, I feel pretty confident in his abilities because he's had time and practice. And I've bit my tongue when I've wanted to, just when my nervous system is just going out of control, when my heart is racing so fast. But I have tried my best to just show some self-control and bit my tongue so that he can feel calm and confident as he's climbing. It would be one thing if I were to come at him yelling and shouting, like, get down from there, you're going to break something, you're going to hurt yourself, versus coming
You hear
towards him
that
and
all
saying,
the
hey,
time.
bud, all the time.
Yeah.
I see it. And I also had the privilege of teaching a nature class at my kids' school
Oh,
last year. And so I taught first and second grade, and it was a nature-based, also faith-based curriculum. And one of my observations after all this was that you can tell the kids that get to play outside. You can tell the kids that get to play outside because they're usually running around. They are running off somewhere. They couldn't be bothered by a teacher. The kids who don't feel so confident and so sure are always kind of like, circling the teacher, like coming back and giving me feedback on what they found, coming back and telling me this and that, which is a very normal and healthy, I think, part of development. But the kids who have unstructured time outside are just far off. They're out in the trees, they're climbing, they're building, they couldn't be bothered. And I think that after having talked to a lot of people and having interviewed a lot of people, occupational therapists, authors who talk about this, our children are not getting enough unstructured outdoor play, and they're not being given enough opportunities to engage in risky play without a
yeah.
parent coming in and interfering, right? Without saying, hey, come down, get down from there, that's dangerous, or hey, stop playing with that. And I've really tried with my kids to bite my tongue, and I actually have a PDF of one-liners now that I say, and it's just all things that I've learned and had to learn because my middle kid was just so just so risky, like, I mean, and it's calculated risk, or I should say it's he does dangerous things carefully. And other people have observed that when he's climbing, he only goes as high up as he's comfortable. Then he comes back down, and then he does it again, and he masters that part of the tree. And once he feels like he's mastered it and is confident, then he'll go on to the next section of the tree. I've watched him do this for years. It's brilliant. It's beautiful. And so that is how I have come to be comfortable with the idea of risky play, is simply allowing a lot of time and space in our schedule for my kids to just be outside doing things like that, being outside, getting messy. Sometimes the mess is a little triggering, but also at the same time, I look around and I just remind myself, like, kids are washable, clothes are washable,
Yeah.
it's a part of being a kid, and it's good for them developmentally. Mud is so good as a sensory, toy or vehicle for kids. Yeah, that's kind of how I got thrust into this embracing risky play, is because of my middle. And it's been a really beautiful journey to watch him get comfortable. Even my older daughter, as you were saying earlier, she's not really climbing trees as high as her brother, but she's the girl that will walk out there, go for a walk in the little woods that back up to our house. And she used to be the most cautious kid ever. Like, she was the kid that wasn't leaving the patio, but giving her the time and space to explore has paid off so much, because she now creates her own little villages back there. She plays with grass and, twigs. And I think a big thing too for our family was that I allowed for opportunities for them to play outside without a lot of toys. I would send them outside and I'd say, I can't wait to see what you're going to come up with. I can't wait to see what you're going to build. Like, come find me when you have something really cool. And so they'd go out and get rocks. They'd go out and get twigs. They'd build little villages. And all of that just comes from their imagination. I think kids just need more time for that imagination to grow. They need more time for parents to be willing to send them out there, and also taking a step back. When we take a step back, when we shut up, our kids can go off and do amazing things.
100%. It's gotten to the point now where my almost 4 and 5 year old, and I only have boys, so they all are into the same thing, but they have gotten to the point where they have created their own worlds outside. And if I come out and I'm like, "Hey, how's it going?" They're like, "Mom, stop! You're like, we're in the middle of something."
Right. Yeah, we can disrupt this imaginative play that they have going on. And that's something I've learned too. Is like, sometimes I want to chime in, and I just have to like pull myself back and say, no, Julianne, just leave them be. Just leave them be. That saying, let a playing toddler play, right? I think something like
Yeah.
that. You just got to leave them be, because, it's so funny, because I think all the time they have their own little world that I am not privy to the details. And what a cool thing, that they can go out there, that they have their own stories in their minds that they've created about the animals, about the trees. And I feel like that's the stuff of childhood. I have fond memories of playing outside, and I have memories that are really special to me, right? That are lived because I was out there with friends, like creating our own worlds out there
Yep.
that our parents had no idea. We were just out playing in the trees, gathering whatever we could, spending hours out there.
Yeah. So, in traditional school settings, kids are often only given about 20 to 30 minutes total of recess and outdoor time. So, what's a realistic way that a family could build more outdoor time into their busy routines?
Absolutely. This is us. So I don't want to say a traditional school. They go to school outside of the home. They are learning from a classical curriculum. So I know that there's a lot of homeschoolers out there who also have a classical curriculum within their homeschool. Our school, we are so fortunate. They, especially this year, and I think it takes parents advocating, but they really value outdoor play. So even our school is K through 12. And this year, they even implemented 15 to 30-minute breaks for the high school kids to just go outside and hang out, which I think is so important, especially for that age. Now, when my kids started in the school setting outside of the home, in the fall time, it's still so nice out. So I would have my kids just go out on the patio for like 15 minutes. I'd say just go stand outside. Literally, I can't even remember. I would like, you have 15 minutes. You can go outside for a little bit before we go to school. You're going to need to come back inside before we leave, but you have 15 minutes. How do you want to spend it? And a lot of times they'd go out on the patio because it's still sunny out, it's warm, and just finding little pockets of our day. Now, my kids get out of school a little bit earlier than a lot of the schools around here. So I have done my best to protect that time. And it does take effort because especially where we live, and I think this can be said for a lot of families, there's so many activities and things that families want to get their kids involved in, extracurriculars, sports, and those things are all well-intentioned. They are good. But for us, I knew that rushing from one activity after school was not going to create a happy home for us. So for a lot of those earlier years when my kids were really little, I protected that time and I said, we are not going to go to dance. We are not going to do this. We're not going to do this sport. And I would just let them play outside. And that was their option, was they could play in their room, they could play with their toys, or they could play outside. Now, for us, I would consider us a very low screen family. We are not no screen, but our usual rhythm for the week is no TV. And for us, low screen means mainly TV. None of my kids have their own personal tablets or devices. Those are saved for travel days if we're on a road trip or if we're on an airplane. So for us, when I say low screen, it means no TV time. And for us, during the school week, it's no TV time from Monday to Friday. Friday night, we have a family movie night. On the weekends, my rule is we do not start the day with TV. The first 2 hours are usually breakfast, getting about, kind of just waking up a little bit. And I think it was a lot easier to revert to TV in the first few hours of the day when the kids were younger. And having lived that experience is why I then moved to the rule of no TV when we first wake up, because when we turn off the TV, my kids were cranky and they were too little to understand. Their brains are still forming. They were too little to understand why it's not good for them to be sitting in front of the TV all morning long. They know the boundaries in which our family operates, and having that not be an option has helped set up my kids to really realize, okay, well, I can either play with my toys inside or I can play outside. And outside is really cool because I can climb the trees, I can go far back into the woods, and it just presented a much better option for them. So for us, with kids being in school, we tried to protect our time. We tried to not have too many scheduled activities after school so that we could really take advantage of being outside together. Especially in the fall, we'd love to go on family bike rides. So after school, I'd say, hey, once everything's put away, we can hop on our bikes and go for a bike ride in the neighborhood. So all of those little moments build up. And I know that at their school as well, they get at least 2 recesses, sometimes 3, depending on the weather. And I think that advocating for more time spent outside for your kids is something that parents need to do. I'm seeing it more and more. Parents are speaking up about how kids need to have more outdoor time. And I think it's going to take a lot more of just advocating for our kids, for schools to prioritize it and to implement it.
Okay, so then last year you actually released a new podcast called My Outdoorsy Mom. What can moms expect to listen to for that podcast?
Yes. So The podcast has been wonderful. I have had the most amazing guests. I have been so blessed and privileged to host amazing people with amazing stories to tell who are very mission aligned with getting kids outside, getting them engaged in unstructured outdoor play, risky play, parents, encouraging parents to increase independence or just giving their kids these opportunities to be independent and to step up. And something that we were talking about earlier, I'm not outdoorsy in the sense of I'm not climbing mountains and hiking and setting up camps and camping every weekend. I think I'm outdoorsy in the sense that I just like to be outside with my family. I like to make memories and build memories with them right where we live. We live in Michigan, and it's so beautiful here in the summertime. We explore all of the Great Lakes. And so my podcast is filled with episodes where you can find encouragement and how to be a little bit more outdoorsy, or as I say, outdoorsy light, and also encouragement with my guests to just keep the mission of sending kids outside, spending time outside. I've had everything from a wilderness, like conservationist, podcaster and YouTube channel. Ray Tiller, he was on the podcast, and he works alongside Coyote Peterson, an amazing YouTuber. If you want to talk about getting your kids interested in nature and the outdoors and wildlife conservation, I've spoken with authors. And so it's been a very cool experience. So check it out. It's the My Outdoorsy Mom podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts. And then, yes, there's also solo episodes where I just give encouragement to moms. I talk through my story of how my kids became these outdoorsy kids, how we became an outdoorsy family, not in the traditional sense of hiking and camping all the time, but just by living life outside together.
Absolutely. I will link all of your practical guides, your Instagram, and your podcast in the show notes, so all of my listeners can go find you as well.
Oh, thank you so much.
It was so good to see you again, because I was on your podcast sometime last year,
yes,
and we got to meet. So I just love following you. It's been such an inspiration. So I really appreciate you coming on mine today.
Oh, thanks for having me, Morgan. This was a treat.
This has been a production of the Ultimate Homeschool Podcast Network. If you made it all the way to the end, you are amazing. Thank you for listening and your support. Let's stay connected, and here are my tasks for you. Subscribe, like, and share on your favorite podcast app or on my website, basecamped.com. Follow me on Instagram and Facebook at basecamped app, and go download Basecamp if you haven't already. Leave a comment and spread the love.